Hi everyone, and welcome to this Fantasy Art Friday video. I've wanted to work on a galaxy dragon for such a long time. I remember when I started working on these dragon fantasy art pieces in 2016. I remember getting a bunch of suggestions from you about working on a galaxy dragon and attempting that. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I could create it with pencils or markers or watercolor or anything else. And while I spent so much time thinking about this idea, I ended up putting it on the back burner for another time. So it's been 3 years since then, so I feel like it's finally time I tried this. In the end, I decided to work on a watercolor painting. It took me a long time to decide on this, the 3 years, but I really do feel like watercolor would help to create the kind of effects I want. And this year I'm really trying to improve with watercolor. It's something that I've always wanted to feel more confident using, and this feels like a really great challenge for that. It's really going to push me out of my comfort zone, and yeah, I've been looking forward to the challenge. As you can see, I started sketching some of the outlines of the dragon, and I decided on this idea and the layout while sketching in my sketchbook. Recently, I've been spending more time planning. For larger, more difficult projects like this, it really helps, and especially in this case where I was working with watercolor, and I wanted to make sure I had a clear plan in mind. When I was happy with the outlines I sketched, I decided to practice with watercolour on a scrap piece of paper. So I started light, waiting for the paint to dry each time, and then I built up the layers in that way. And also, I initially added some masking fluid to the circle I'd sketched. I felt like this would be a great opportunity to test out all of these different techniques before I start applying them to the final piece. I used Winsor and Newton Cotman watercolour paints, and in terms of the colours I decided on, I chose Payne's Grey, Prussian Blue, Ultramarine, Intense Blue, Alizarin Crimson, and Rose Madder Hue. Towards the later stages of this test run, I also added magenta, cerulean blue, and white Prismacolor pencils, outlining the different layers. And I also wanted to try out a new pen that I recently picked up. It's a white acrylic paint pen, designed for Christmas decorations and things like that, but it gave really nice bright, opaque highlights for the stars. Once I felt confident with my plan, I started off by masking some areas of the painting with the masking fluid. Then I left that to dry for a little while before starting to add the watercolour. And much like the earlier practicing I did, I started off light and built up the layers, using all the same supplies. Before adding any of the pencil outlines, once the paint was dry, I was able to remove the masking fluid, and along with adding the pencil outlines, the stars, and the highlights, I also coloured the planets using Prussian blue, ice blue, and cerise Copic markers. After that, it was time for the next section, and I started by adding masking fluid to the underside of the dragon's wings, and then I began adding a spiral galaxy underneath the dragon. And I was initially leaving the paint to flow and mix on its own, letting the paint do the work, and then I continued to add layers on top once it dried. And I didn't want to try and paint too many details here, especially in this area. I didn't want to overpaint because I really loved the effect the paint gave as it dried. Then, after the galaxy, I added a little bit of basic colouring to the dragon before I decided to start adding the large area of colouring underneath the wings and around the galaxy. And I used the same technique again, letting the paint dry and building up the layers, adding some really dark layers this time, and again following that with the pencil layer, and finally the white acrylic pen for the stars and the highlights. I then made sure to colour the planet in the foreground, using the Copic markers again, and finally, after that, it was time to start working on the details of the dragon, and I blended a bit more intense blue along with the crimson and rose paints to make the dragon really stand out with a nice vibrant colour scheme. And then eventually it was time to use a pen to add a few ink outlines, and in this case I chose to use a Copic Multiliner SP 0.03. I decided to use a mixture of the white pencil, a white GellyRoll pen, and the white acrylic paint pen to add highlights lining the inside edges of the dragon. And then for the final touches, I added a few more stars in the background and also tried to make it look like the spiral galaxy was linked to the dragon in some way by adding trails of stars flowing upwards. And after that, this fantasy art was completed. I absolutely loved working on this project. It was honestly so much fun, and I can't believe it took me 3 years to finally work on this. I'm really happy with the results, and I'm proud of myself for getting out of my comfort zone and trying watercolour in this way, working on such a large painting. So I feel like this was a good step in the right direction, and hopefully it will lead to more watercolour paintings in the future. So please let me know what you think of this in the comments below, and also let me know if you have any suggestions for future videos you'd like to see me try. If you want to see more art videos like this, then feel free to subscribe to my channel, and any thumbs up or shares on this video are hugely appreciated. If you want to follow and support my progress, then be sure to check out the links in the description for my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and Patreon. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you all soon.